Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. We love digging into the latest AI research, and you sent us some really interesting articles this time around.
Yeah, it looks like you've got your eye on the future of language models.
Definitely. It's all about what comes after BERT, right?
Hmm.
I mean, BERT's been a game changer, but there's always something new on the horizon.
That's for sure. And the research you sent over on this ModernBERT has got me pretty excited.
Me too.
Yeah.
So that's what we're diving into today, ModernBERT. What is it? How does it build on what BERT started? And the big question, why should you care?
Basically, we're going to unpack why this is a potential BERT killer.
And from what I've been reading, this isn't just like a minor upgrade.
No, not at all.
We're talking about faster, more accurate, and it can handle way more information at once, even code.
Yeah, the code part is really interesting. We'll get into that.
Definitely. And just to add another layer of intrigue, the folks behind ModernBERT are Answer, AI, and Lighten.
Two names you might recognize if you're deep in the AI world.
Right, so we're starting with some serious credibility here. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's acknowledge the giant in the room. BERT itself is still a massively popular model.
Oh, absolutely. BERT's not going away anytime soon.
Over 68 million downloads last month. That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, BERT is like the Honda Civic of language models.
Okay, I like that analogy.
It's reliable. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. And it just works, especially for tasks like information retrieval, text classification, picking out important entities, the stuff so many systems rely on.
Right, the bread and butter.
Exactly. But even the best Honda Civic could use an upgrade every now and then.
So that's where ModernBERT comes in, our souped-up sports car?
Something like that.
Mhm.
One of the key differences is the underlying architecture. BERT is what we call an encoder-only model.
Right.
And lately, there's been a ton of hype around these decoder-only models like GPT, Llama, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I've definitely been hearing about those. Are they related?
Sort of, decoders are amazing for generating text, like writing stories, having conversations, like the Ferraris of the AI world, super powerful, but also really resource intensive.
So is ModernBERT ditching the encoder-only design then?
Actually, no. And that's a really important point. While those decoder models are super cool, they're often too big and complex and expensive for a lot of everyday tasks.
Makes sense.
Encoder-only models, like BERT and ModernBERT, they're much more efficient.
So what's the difference in what they actually do?
Think of it this way. Encoders are like creating a numerical fingerprint for words and sentences, so computers can understand and process language much, much faster.
Oh, okay. So we're not talking about writing poems with ModernBERT. We're talking about making sense of information.
Exactly. And that's still super important. Like, these encoder-only models are behind things like recommendation systems, targeted ads, content filtering.
Wow, so they're already everywhere.
Oh, yeah. And they even act as a support system for those big decoder-only models. We're talking about retrieval augmented generation, RAG, where they help large language models access and retrieve specific information.
Okay, so they're kind of like the brains behind the operation.
Yeah, and acting as safety filters, too, to prevent harmful content from being generated.
That's really interesting. So even with all the hype around these generative models, encoders are still holding their own?
More than holding their own, encoder-only models are used for billions more actions every year than decoder-only models.
Wow. Okay, so case closed. Encoders are still vital. But why do we need a new one? Why not just stick with good old BERT?
Because ModernBERT is what we call a Pareto improvement. It's better in every way, not just trading one benefit for another. We're talking better accuracy, speed, context length, and it can even handle code.
Okay, you officially have my attention. Break it down for me. What makes ModernBERT so much better?
Well, first off, it's getting state-of-the-art results on a whole range of benchmarks. It's even beating deBERT v3, which has been the top dog for encoder models for years.
deBERT v3? I feel like I've heard of that.
It was the champ, basically, and ModernBERT is beating it in some cases.
Wow, so it's dethroning the king. I love an underdog story.
Exactly. And remember how I mentioned speed? ModernBERT is twice as fast as deBERT, and it gets even faster when dealing with different length inputs. Plus, it's super efficient with memory, so you can process more data at once.
Okay, so it's not just faster, it's also more efficient. That's a double win.
Yeah.
You also mentioned something about context length earlier. What's that all about?
That's where things get really exciting. ModernBERT can handle a massive 8,192 tokens at once.
8,192. That sounds like a lot.
It is. That's 16 times larger than most current encoder models. So we're talking about analyzing whole research papers, complex code, all in one go. It opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Okay, I'm starting to see why people are calling this a game changer. Being able to analyze that much information at once is a huge deal.
Totally. And we haven't even gotten to the code part yet, which is another area where ModernBERT really shines. It's the first encoder-only model that's been trained on a massive data set of code.
Wait, so it can understand and work with code? What does that even mean?
We'll get into the specifics later, but think super-powered code search engines that understand the meaning of your code, not just keywords. Or AI tools that can help you write code faster with fewer errors. Almost like a coding buddy who's read every line of code ever written.
All right, I'm officially hooked. Tell me more.
Let's talk about how all of this translates into real-world performance. You know, in actual tests, ModernBERT is just blowing other models out of the water.
Give me some examples. What kind of tests are we talking about?
Well, take natural language understanding. You know how well a model can actually understand language, the nuances?
Right.
ModernBERT just crushed it on the GRUE benchmark. That's
Right.
kind of the gold standard test in this area.
Okay, but lots of models do well on GLUE, right?
Yeah. But what's really impressive is that even the base version of ModernBERT, the smaller one, outperformed all other base models. It even beat deBERT v3 base.
Wait, the base model beat deBERT v3. That's the one you said was like the reigning champion, right?
Yep. And it's using like a fifth of the memory. Super efficient.
Wow. Okay, so this base model is like a little giant killer. I like it.
It's a beast. And it gets even better. Another area where ModernBERT really shines is information retrieval. You know, finding the most relevant info from a massive amount of data.
Right. Like crucial for search engines, recommendations, all that.
Exactly. Question answering systems, anything that needs to find the needle in the haystack. And on the BERT benchmark, ModernBERT consistently outperformed other encoder models for both single vector and multi-vector retrieval.
So it's not just finding any info, it's finding the best info.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's general information retrieval. What about the long context stuff we talked about?
Yeah.
You know, that crazy 8,192 token capacity.
Oh, yeah. That's where things get really wild. Imagine being able to analyze like an entire research paper in one go.
That's nuts.
Or a huge chunk of code. And on MLDR, a particularly challenging benchmark for this kind of long context retrieval, ModernBERT did exceptionally well. It's built to understand these long-form pieces of content.
All right, color me impressed. But we got to talk about the code part. This is the first encoder-only model trained on this huge data set of code.
Right.
That's got to have some major implications.
Totally. So on benchmarks like CodeSearchNet and Stack Overflow QA, which are all about finding relevant code snippets or answers to programming questions, ModernBERT just crushed it.
Okay, so it's good at understanding code, but Stack Overflow QA also has those long questions and answers, right?
Yep, often exceeding 2,000 tokens. So it's not just understanding code in isolation, it's understanding code in context.
That's huge.
Mhm.
What does that actually look like for, say, a software developer using this?
Think about searching for code not just by keywords, but by the actual meaning. Imagine AI tools that can understand what you're trying to achieve and suggest relevant code snippets, even entire functions. Like having this super-powered coding partner who's read every line of code ever written.
That would be a game changer.
Mhm.
But you also mentioned ModernBERT being super efficient. What makes it so efficient?
Well, the researchers behind it were very deliberate about making it not just powerful, but also practical. They implemented a bunch of optimizations to really squeeze every ounce of performance out of it.
So it's not just about brute force, it's about clever design.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were really mindful about things like memory usage, processing speed, even how well it runs on the kind of hardware most people have access to.
And how did that turn out?
In tests, ModernBERT was insanely fast. For short sequences of text, it was twice as fast as deBERT v3. For longer ones, it was more than twice as fast as the next fastest model.
Twice as fast. That's a serious speed boost.
Yeah.
What does that mean for real-world applications?
It means you can process huge amounts of data in a fraction of the time. Faster training, faster inference, faster results. For someone dealing with a lot of data, that kind of efficiency is life-changing.
So we've got this super powerful model. It's also super efficient. What's the catch?
Honestly, there isn't one. And that's one of the coolest things about this. ModernBERT really embodies this idea of democratizing AI.
What do you mean by that?
The folks behind ModernBERT, Answer.ai and Lighten, they're really committed to open access. They've released the model weights, the entire training code base under a very permissive open source license.
So anyone can use it, modify it, build on it, all for free.
Exactly. And they've even gone a step further and shared the intermediate training checkpoints, which is like a crazy level of transparency. You don't see that very often.
Why is that a big deal?
It means other researchers can replicate their results, understand the training process better, even potentially improve on the model. That kind of openness is huge for advancing the whole field of AI.
I love that. It's like a rising tide lifts all boats situation. But with all this talk about benchmarks and efficiency, I want to make sure we don't lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What are the real-world applications of this thing? What can people actually do with ModernBERT?
We've touched on a few, like information retrieval, code analysis, document summarization. But honestly, I think we're just scratching the surface here.
So it's like we've been handed this incredibly powerful new tool, and we're still figuring out all the amazing things we can build with it.
Exactly.
What are some of the areas you're most excited about?
Well, the code stuff is super interesting to me. Like, imagine tools that can actually help developers write better code faster with fewer errors.
Yeah, that would be a dream come true.
Right. Think about like a semantic code search engine.
Yeah?
You could find exactly what you need based on what your code is supposed to do, not just matching keywords.
That would be so much more powerful than what we have now.
Totally. Or even like AI-powered code assistants that could generate whole blocks of code based on what you tell it you're trying to do.
Like having a super smart coding partner who already knows everything about every language.
Exactly. And then on the other side, with those huge chunks of text it can handle.
Yeah, that still blows my mind. Think about being able to analyze stuff like legal contracts or scientific papers, entire books even, all at once.
That's right. And not just analyze them, but summarize them. Pull out the key insights in just seconds.
So someone who does a lot of research or analysis, this would be huge for them.
Oh, yeah, totally. It could speed up research so much, make it way easier to find the info you need, and even help uncover connections and insights we might have missed before. And because ModernBERT is so efficient, now even individuals and small teams can access this kind of power. It used to be only for big companies with tons of resources.
I love that. That's what's so exciting about all this democratizing access to these powerful AI tools. But it also makes me think about, the potential downsides. Anything that's powerful could be used for bad stuff too, right?
You're not wrong. It's definitely something we have to be aware of. But I also think it's important to remember any tool can be used for good or bad.
True. A hammer can build a house or break a window.
Exactly. It all comes down to responsible development and responsible use.
So how do we make sure ModernBERT is used responsibly?
It's a tough question, and it's not just on one group to solve. It's on researchers, developers, policymakers, everyone. We need to be thinking about transparency, accountability, ethical guidelines for building and using these systems.
Right, and making sure people understand the potential benefits and risks so we can all make informed decisions.
Absolutely. We need to be having a broader conversation about the role of AI in society as a whole.
Well said. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into ModernBERT, I think it's safe to say we're both pretty impressed.
To say the least.
It's faster, more accurate, more efficient, handles more information than anything we've seen before. And the fact that it's open source, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a huge step forward.
Right.
It shows the incredible innovation happening in AI, and it gives us a glimpse into the future of how we'll interact with and understand language.
It makes you wonder what other amazing applications are just waiting to be discovered in the next few years as more people start using this.
For sure. It feels like we're on the verge of a whole new era.
So to everyone listening, I encourage you, go explore ModernBERT for yourselves. Dive into the research, play around with the code, see what you can build with it.
You might just be the one to discover the next big thing.
Exactly. The future of AI is in all of our hands. Let's make sure we use it wisely and responsibly for the benefit of everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ModernBERT. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.